All right, today we are jumping headfirst into one of the most powerful institutions in India, the judiciary. We're going to break down how it's built, what incredible tools it has at its disposal, and really get to the bottom of why it's known as the ultimate guardian of the Constitution. Let's get into it. So let's kick things off with a huge question. Think about it. We have a parliament elected by the people to make laws. But who actually gets the final word on what those laws can and cannot be? The answer is probably not who you think. And that question leads us right into our first part. We're about to see how the judiciary really carved out its role as the final authority, the one with the last word, in a power struggle that literally shaped the India we know today. Picture this. It's 1973, and there's this massive constitutional battle brewing. The core question was absolutely monumental. Does Parliament have unlimited power to change the Constitution? I mean, could it actually rewrite its very soul? This whole conflict came to a head in a famous case called the Case of Ananda Bharati case. And what came out of that showdown was honestly one of the most powerful judicial ideas anywhere in the world, the basic structure doctrine. The idea itself is pretty simple, but it's incredibly profound. The Supreme Court basically said, look, Parliament, you can amend the Constitution, but you can't touch its core. You can't destroy its fundamental basic structure. So you're probably asking, okay, so what is this basic structure? Well, and here's the real kicker. The judiciary gave itself the power to decide what that is case by case. So things like democracy, the rule of law, and secularism, they're all considered part of it, but the list is open-ended. This doctrine pretty much solidifies the judiciary as the ultimate interpreter and protector of the Constitution's spirit. Okay, so you have this incredibly powerful judiciary, but how is it all put together? Let's take a look at the actual architecture of justice and see how this power is structured across the country. Now, this is pretty interesting. Unlike some other countries that have separate court systems for the national government and state governments, India has one single unified judicial system. What that means is that a decision from a higher court is binding on every single lower court. It creates this one consistent legal fabric for the entire nation. And that system is stacked in a really clear three-tier structure. Right at the very top, you've got the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land. Then you have the high courts, which are the top courts for each state. And then at the ground level, you have the subordinate or district courts. That's where most people have their first encounter with the justice system. All right, we've got the structure down. Now let's talk about the tools. What are the actual powers these courts use to flex their constitutional muscle? Before we get to the really big constitutional powers, it helps to know the two main playgrounds the courts operate in. You've got criminal law, which deals with stuff that's considered a crime against society, theft, murder, things like that. And then you have civil law, which is all about disputes between people, like arguments over rent or property. The judiciary is the referee in both of these huge areas. But here it is. The judiciary's absolute biggest power, its ultimate trump card, is called judicial review. This is the power to look at any law passed by Parliament or any action by the government and ask one simple question. Is this constitutional? And if the answer to that question is no, if a law violates the Constitution, the courts can declare it void, just gone. Think about that. This is the power that truly makes the judiciary the final say, the ultimate guardian of the Constitution. And the classic scales of justice, they're the perfect symbol for exactly this role. The judiciary is in a constant balancing act, using powers like judicial review to weigh the government's power against the people's rights. It's their job to make sure the rule of law wins out over the rule of anyone's personal whim. But all this power means nothing if an ordinary person can't actually get to the courts, right? Well, back in the 1980s, the Supreme Court did something truly revolutionary that basically blew the courthouse doors wide open for everybody. This quote really gets to the heart of it. For the very first time, you didn't have to be the one directly hurt to go to court. You could actually file a case for someone else, for a whole group of people whose rights were being violated. This new tool is called a public interest litigation, or PIL, and this changed everything. It turned the judiciary from just a passive referee into an active player fighting for social justice. It meant any concerned citizen could bring important public issues straight to the highest courts in the land. And the results? They've been massive. We're talking about PILs that freed bonded laborers, that forced action to protect the environment from pollution, and that improved the horrible conditions inside prisons. It really became this incredible tool to hold the entire system accountable. Okay, let's bring it all home. We've talked about the structure, the doctrines, the powers. But why does any of this matter to you personally? Because when you strip everything else away, the hierarchy, the reviews, the PILs, this entire massive complex system exists for one primary reason. It's all basically a giant shield designed to protect the one thing that allows you to live a life of dignity. And that one thing is your fundamental rights, the core promises made to every single citizen by the Constitution. The judiciary is the final guardian of your right to equality, making sure nobody can be discriminated against. It protects your right to freedom, including your freedom of speech. It protects your right to life, which courts have said includes the right to a clean environment and a decent livelihood. And maybe most importantly, it protects your absolute right to go to court if any of these other rights are ever threatened. So we've seen that the Indian judiciary is this unbelievably powerful institution. It's a guardian, a watchdog that keeps the other branches of government in check. But that leaves us with one last very important question to chew on. In this whole system of checks and balances, who checks the judiciary?